The search engine is the most powerful mind control device ever invented, affecting right now more than 5 billion people around the world. Earth has shifted under people's feet. People have no idea. Democracy has been dominated, if not completely subsumed under big tech. They have been using the powers they have to shift millions of votes in elections, not just here, but worldwide. We're the only research group in the world that has been focusing for a long time on Google and other tech companies. They are manipulating our thinking, our attitudes, our beliefs, our votes. We have been doing to them what they do to us and our kids and our grandkids 24 hours a day. But it is stressful and it is a little scary. I just gave this briefing. It was at Stanford University to these AGs, and I just told them all the things that we had been discovering. Afterwards, I was waiting out in the hallway. One of the AGs came out and said, "Dr. Epstein, I don't mean to scare you." He said, "But based on what you've told us," he said, "I think it's likely you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months."
Welcome into another episode of Ideas Have Consequences. And today I have with me a Dr. Robert Epstein, who is a behavioral scientist, a PhD from Harvard University. He is the former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, and he is also a friend of mine. And it's just a pleasure for me to have Robert with me. How are you today?
A little stressed. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. And, I wanted to have you on the show today because your research absolutely fascinates me and it will fascinate this audience. Give us the big picture of what it is that you do.
Well, to put this in context, just yesterday, Dr. Robert Malone, who I suspect your audience is familiar with because of the controversy over the coronavirus vaccine, he tweeted to his, and I don't know him, by the way. I don't know him at all. I've never communicated with him, but he tweeted to his 1 million followers yesterday, support Dr. Robert Epstein's work. It is vital. So that was his tweet. It was out of the blue from my perspective, but I thought, wow, that's amazing that he knows what I'm doing. But what I am doing actually is vital. And people are not aware of it, and that's really a shame because right now, people don't know it, but the Earth has actually shifted under our feet over the last few years. Democracy has been dominated, if not completely subsumed under big tech. Big tech companies, because we have no laws or regulations restricting them, they have been using the powers they have to shift millions of votes in elections, not just here, but worldwide, and also to indoctrinate our children. I'm a parent of 5. I'm aware, as many parents are, that a lot of mysterious, crazy things seem to be happening with young people. Well, those mysterious, crazy things are really happening, and they're driven by the tech companies. So we've got 2 big problems: democracy, indoctrination of our kids. And I have been studying the mechanisms by which the big tech companies exercise their powers now for more than 11 years. So I know more about this probably than anyone in the world. And I said earlier, I'm a little stressed. Well, yeah, what I'm doing is very stressful. And my team we all love each other and we love what we're doing, but we're all a little stressed and sometimes a little afraid because of the work we do.
We recently had some monumental news that no one is talking about. For the first time in our history, the interest we pay on the national debt surpassed every individual budget item except Social Security. That's right. The U.S. now spends more on interest than on national defense or even Medicare. And it's only getting worse as big government continues to spend like drunken sailors. That's why savvy investors, central banks, and concerned savers are turning to gold, something not tied to the inflated US dollar. You can too with the help of Birch Gold. For over 20 years, Birch Gold Group has helped thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, text IDEAS to 989898 and claim your free, no obligation info kit on gold. Birch Gold has earned my trust, and their education-first approach, their thousands of happy customers, and their countless 5-star reviews are all reasons why you should invest in Birch Gold. Protect your savings today. Text IDEAS to 989898.
We're the only research group in the world that is focusing and has been focusing for a long time on the mechanisms by which Google and other tech companies, the mechanisms by which they are manipulating our thinking, our attitudes, our beliefs, our votes. We study and quantify those mechanisms. And then we've been doing that since 2013. And since 2016, we have been doing to them what they do to us and our kids and our grandkids 24 hours a day. We have been building tracking systems that monitor the content that they are sending to real kids and to real voters. And we now have in place a nationwide, large scale, we hope, permanent monitoring system in all 50 states. And we are gathering data 24 hours a day from the computers of more than 14,000 registered voters, again, in all 50 states. And this is a politically balanced group. So we can see the manipulations as they are occurring, and we are capturing them. We're archiving them. We're preserving them. This has never been done before, and we're the only group in the world that is doing this. But it is stressful, and it is a little scary.
Now, before we get to the specifics of how big tech is doing this, what attracted you to this work? What led you to do what you were doing?
Well, I've been a researcher for more than 45 years. My PhD is from Harvard University. I was the last doctoral student of the eminent psychologist B.F. Skinner. So I'm very well trained, and my research is very rigorous. And I've done research in many topics over the years. But back in 2012, in fact, New Year's Day, I got a bunch of messages, 8 or 9 or 10 of them, all from Google, saying that my website had been hacked and they were cutting off access to it. So I got curious, since I've been a programmer since I was a teenager. I got curious about this. Who made Google the sheriff of the internet, first of all? Why was I only hearing from Google as opposed to government agency or some nonprofit organization? And then I got really curious as a programmer how they were doing this blocking. And they weren't just blocking me on the Google search engine, which I get, that's part of them. They weren't just blocking me on Google platforms. They were somehow blocking me on Safari, which is part of Apple. That doesn't make sense. They were blocking me on Firefox, which is run by a nonprofit organization called Mozilla. That doesn't make any sense. So I started to kind of dig in and learn about Google and learn about the tech behind Google. And by the end of 2012, I was getting very, very, very suspicious about how they operate. Based on some research that had been done in the marketing field, I began to suspect that they could be using their search results to manipulate people's thinking and behavior. Because people click on those higher search results. 50% of all clicks go to the top 2 results. 95% of all clicks are on the first page of Google search results. And companies spend billions of dollars trying to push themselves up another notch If you put yourself up one notch on that first page, that can be turned into a 35% increase in clicks and corresponding increase, of course, in sales. So I asked myself a question, which was, well, if people value, for whatever reason, if they value those high ranking search results, could high ranking search results be used to manipulate people's thinking and behavior? It was simply a question I was raising. I thought, well, I'm an experimenter. I know how to test these things. So I thought, well, we'll build a Google simulator. We'll randomly assign people to different groups. And in some groups, they're going to see search results that favor one candidate and not another. And I thought we probably could shift people's voting preferences, shift their opinions about candidates, I thought, by 2 or 3%, which that doesn't sound like much, but in a very close election, if you can shift the voting preferences of undecided voters reliably by 2 or 3%, well, that means you can fix the election. You can determine who wins. The point is, first experiment that we ran with a representative sample of U.S. voters, these were not college students, we got a shift of 43%, which, of course, I thought was an error. It had to be an error. That's impossible. People can't trust search results that much that after one search, and it wasn't just their voting preferences that changed, it was their opinions about the candidate, how much they trusted and liked the candidates. Really, it was unbelievable. So of course, I didn't trust it. So we repeated the whole thing with another group representative of US voters. And this time we got a shift of 66%. So again, I'm a little suspicious. We also, at this point, wondered whether we could hide what we were doing, because we did have in that first experiment, 25% of people noticed that they were seeing biased search results. But that means 75% did not notice. But we decided to try to mask the bias. We did this by having, pro candidate A, search result A, and then we mixed in a B, pro candidate B, and then we went back to A. So we tried doing a little bit of masking just to confuse people. In that third experiment, we also got another shift in voting preferences of over 40%, and the proportion of people who saw bias dropped to 0 because of our masking. So we had learned two absolutely crazy, nutty things. One, that Google and maybe other search engines had the power to shift people's thinking about candidates and their votes by an enormous proportion, at least for undecided voters, not for people who are already committed, but those people in the middle, those determine who wins an election. And so we learned, number one, that Google had enormous power to shift people's votes, but also we learned that they could do it without anyone knowing. That's really creepy. And then we realized, hey, wait, this kind of content is we learned later, Google calls it ephemeral content. We learned years later. In other words, it's content. When you type in a search term and you get some search suggestions flashing at you and then they disappear, and then finally maybe you click on one of them and you get search results, and then maybe you click on a search result and you go to a web page. Now the search results disappear too. So the search results and the search suggestions are all ephemeral, meaning fleeting, short-lived, and they're not stored anywhere. So now think of what we were learning. We were learning that Google could shift maybe millions of votes in a national election. They could do it, number two, without anyone knowing, and number three, without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace. Now we're just doing this on our own. This is 2013. The Washington Post actually wrote a big story about our discovery. So that was back in 2013. 2015, we published a very comprehensive scientific study about our discovery in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which is a very prestigious place to publish because they publish papers in all the sciences. We learned that our paper, by the way, was in the top 1% that year of all the papers they were publishing in all the sciences. So, and since then, that paper has been downloaded or accessed from the National Academy of Sciences more than 230,000 times. So we had actually made a significant discovery. We had discovered a new form of influence made possible by the internet, which is largely or entirely controlled by a couple of tech companies. See, so now we had another feature too, that Google can do this, but you can't counteract what Google is doing. You can't even see what Google is doing. This is not like a television commercial where the Democrats buy a commercial, the Republicans buy a commercial. So the Democrats buy 2 commercials, the Republicans buy 2 commercials. This is not like that. If the platform itself wants to exert this kind of influence, you can't even see what they're doing, number one. And number two, it leaves no paper trail, of course. And number three, you can't counteract it. It's not like I can buy a billboard and counteract what they're doing. I can't counteract it. So it's a completely different kind of control than any form of control that humans have ever invented in human history. And believe it or not, and I'm telling you all this, obviously with a lot of excitement in my voice, this was just the tip of the iceberg. This was just the beginning.
Folks, you're not going to like this. If you think you're prepared, take note from millennials and Gen Z. Now, I hate to admit it, but they're doing something right. Research shows they're more prepared than other generations, from their savings accounts to their emergency stockpiles. You have no excuse. If you're not prepared, you're failing. Get started with My Patriot Supply. Since 2008, My Patriot Supply has helped 3 million Americans gear up for emergencies. Today, their popular 4-week emergency food kits can't stay out of customers' carts. I've bought them. Get yours right now at my website, preparewithideas.com. That's preparewithideas.com. Each food kit offers over 2,000 calories every day. Plus, with ultra-durable 4-layered packaging, it lasts up to 25 years in storage. Order as many kits as you need and save $50 on each one. Free shipping is included. If even younger ones can sense that something is coming, and something is, you know it must be coming soon. You have no time to waste. Stock up on these essential food kits at preparewithideas.com. That's preparewithideas.com.
We learned starting in 2016 about other new forms of influence controlled mainly by Google, to a lesser extent by Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We began to learn about and to study and quantify other powerful forms of influence that are in the hands of these tech companies and that you can't counteract and generally you can't see. And then 2018, this just made my head spin. 2018, there was a leak from Google of emails to a reporter at the Wall Street Journal, John McKinnon. You might know him or know of him. And McKinnon wrote a piece about these leaked emails from Google. And in these emails, Google employees were discussing how can we shift people's views about Trump's travel ban using ephemeral experiences. Ephemeral experiences. That was in their emails. In other words, what I had been studying at that point for 5 years, they talked about it within the company. They knew that they had these powers and they had been using these powers. This was not just me at this point talking about the hypotheticals anymore. This was actually something that the people at the company were aware of and were undoubtedly using systematically. 2015, also, I get a call from an attorney general of Mississippi at the time, Jim Hood. And Jim Hood was running for re-election as attorney general, AG, because in Mississippi, the AGs are elected. They're not elected in every state, but they are in Mississippi. And he wondered whether Google could interfere with the election. And I said, oh, yeah. He was worried because he had just sued Google in behalf of Mississippi. And Google had replied by suing him personally just to make his life miserable. So he was quite worried about Google. And I said, yes, they can shift a lot of votes in Mississippi, and here's how they can do it. And, there's really nothing you can do about it, and so on. He was very worried. And then he asked me a question which got me obsessed with another issue. He said, well, if they're doing it, how would we know? How would we know? He said that in law enforcement, we would use, he called them sock puppets. Now they're called bots. We would use fake people and we would do searches and see what kind of results we were getting, see if they were biased. And I said, well, that won't work because Google has big histories on all of us, profiles, they call them. And if you are communicating with them through a bot, they can see that that's a bot because it has no history, it has no profile. So they would send unbiased content to you, and you would miss it. You don't know what I said. The only way you could actually see what they're doing is kind of looking over the shoulders of real voters and seeing what content they were sending to real voters, because they personalize content. So which a lot of people love. My late wife loved it. She thought Google was her personal shopper. She liked all that personalized content. But I said, the only way to know what they're doing is you have to look over the shoulders of real voters. And he said, well, how would you do that? And I go, I don't know. But starting in 2016, we got some funding and we started to build the first ever system to monitor the content that Google was sending to real voters. This was eye-opening. I'm telling you, like I said before, the earth has shifted under our feet and we just don't know it. Most people don't know it anyway. The point is that we began to learn through this monitoring system, our own surveillance system, surveilling them, that they were indeed using these techniques that we had been studying for years, and they were shifting votes by the millions. So just to close off this point, in the 2016 alone, they shifted somewhere between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes to Hillary Clinton without people knowing, and she actually won the popular vote by about 2.8 million votes. So in other words, if you took Google out of that election in 2016, the popular vote would have been pretty much neck and neck. And in other words, she would have been basically slaughtered in the Electoral College. But still, I'm way back here in 2016. And now it's 8 years later, and wow, have we made progress since then. But I just wanted to tell you, those are the two basic things that we have become experts in. One is studying the techniques they use to manipulate. And number two, developing larger and larger monitoring systems to track, to gather evidence showing what techniques they're actually using.
Okay, so to use a potential example of an ephemeral experience, I sit down at my laptop right here and I pull up Google and I type in, was Abraham Lincoln and it auto populates the question Republican. I think the average person using Google assumes, and then there's a drop down menu that offers alternatives to that question. It's predicting what my question is, and I think the most people assume that from the top on down that those are ordered not by Google, but by the popularity of the question. Was Abraham Lincoln a Republican? If that's the first thing that auto-populates, the assumption of most people is that's because that's the question that people are most often asking, and straight on down. But what you're saying is that the ephemeral experience, say when they're auto-populating with something like that, isn't necessarily driven by that. It's more murky. It's more like the New York Times bestseller list, where the algorithms are quite secretive and the rankings aren't just according to the raw data of what the best selling book actually is, but rather according to their own preferences. Is that an accurate summary of an ephemeral experience?
That's part of it. It's actually much more nefarious because, first of all, you're talking about just the search suggestions at the top. Those search suggestions are generated just for you, and they're generated to manipulate you. Now, you're still talking about the search suggestions, but the fact is, once you click on something or once you finish typing your search term, now below that, you're going to get all the search results. Those are also generated just for you, and they're set up to manipulate you. So the real picture is really dark. It's dark and it's creepy, and it's, again, invisible to people. And it is incredibly powerful. So in this year,
And pardon me for one second, Robert. Even the search results, I think most people assume that the search results are ranked according to their popularity. But you're saying, no, that's not the case. Google is rigging the outcome, and they're rigging it by personalizing it to you. So what hits at number one in the case of whatever it is that you're typing in doesn't have necessarily anything to do with its popularity, but rather what Google wants to deliver to you.
Yes. In fact, if you go back in time, you'll find that when these services were first developed, I think they were based mainly just on popularity. But over time, executives at Google realized that they could use this content to achieve their own goals, financial and political. And more they began rigging the results to suit their purposes, which of course they never actually announced. So their purposes are very, very, closely held. But over the years, we have found ways to figure out not only the powers they have to manipulate thinking and behavior, but we've also captured the evidence. So right now, if you go to americasdigitalshield.com, which is a new project that I presented in congressional testimony just in December, Americas with an S, digitalshield.com, you will see a dashboard in which we're summarizing the data, the ephemeral data that we're collecting 24 hours a day. And this keeps the number keeps increasing every second because we're pulling data from the computers of more than 14,000 registered voters in all 50 states. So we've now preserved more than 80 million of these ephemeral experiences, and we're analyzing them as quickly as we're receiving them. So we are actually documenting censorship, bias, indoctrination. We're collecting the evidence. Now, I can give you some quick examples, things that people never thought of, but we're actually collecting the data, the actual evidence. What if right now, 6 months before the election, roughly? What if right now Google was sending out on its homepage register to vote reminders, mainly to members of one party? Well, first of all, that party would be Democrats. I happen to like Democrats, so I'm okay with that, sort of.
Yeah, you're not a MAGA hat wearing Trump supporter.
No, I'm not. I'm a truth seeker, and I believe in our country and I believe in democracy wholeheartedly. And I think that all of us should put our country and our democracy ahead of any particular party or candidate. So that's why I speak out about these things, even where I agree with what Google is doing. But what if right now they're sending out register to vote reminders mainly to Democrats, which, by the way, they are. And there's no way to know that unless you have a monitoring system in place, which I just happen to have in place. But other than that, there's no way to know that because all of those reminders are ephemeral. They're not stored anywhere. But what if they're sending out more of those reminders, register to vote, to Democrats? Well, then guess what happens? A lot more Democrats register to vote, which will affect the outcome of the election. What if a couple of months from now, when people in many states can mail in their ballots, what if Google and maybe Facebook and maybe Instagram and maybe TikTok, what if they're sending out mail in your vote reminders mainly to members of one party? Well, that's also going to have a tremendous impact. And what about when we get to the election and they are sending out go vote reminders mainly to members of one party, which, by the way, they did in the midterms because we were monitoring in Florida alone, 100% of Democrats in Florida were getting from Google go vote reminders all day long on election day. Only 59% of Republicans were getting those reminders. Okay, that is a huge manipulation of votes.
As we go through life, the years bring us wisdom, experience, and memories we hold dear. Yet with age, our health often faces new challenges. It's a natural part of life, but it's crucial to address these changes with the right care and attention. For me, one of the ways to stay sharp is to supplement. I've been using Liver Health Formula, and I recommend you try it for yourself to see the results that it can bring. And right now, I think is a time to start taking care of your liver because there is a silent epidemic affecting 100 million Americans. 1 in 3 Americans suffer from an overworked and sluggish liver. It affects our weight, energy levels, clear thinking and productivity, and even sleep. Our livers get bombed every day with GMOs, microplastics, toxins, and all of the stuff that you might not even know about. Liver Health Formula can support your liver to minimize the impacts of all of this. It is a premium supplement designed with 11 clinically proven botanicals to support and detoxify your liver, helping you feel revitalized and ready to conquer each day. Just listen to Mr. Harrington's testimonial, who shared his transformative journey. At first, I was skeptical, but the health improvement has been nothing but amazing. The tired, foggy feeling I've had is gone. I have more energy for a longer duration. Also, the service and delivery is always prompt. Of course, results are not typical, thus you have to see for yourself. There's an exclusive deal for my audience. Head to getliverhelp.com/Larry. And as a special offer, you'll get a free 1-month supply of nano-powered omega-3s with your order. That's getliverhelp.com/Larry. I have Google pulled up right now. Can you think of an ephemeral experience, something that I can type in here that we can demonstrate to the audience as an example of the kind of thing that Google is doing?
Well, isn't it in the news right now that they've altered the definition of something? What's that word that's in the news where they've altered the definition?
Oh, probably a man or a woman or something like that. I'm not sure. Guys, can you think of what he might be referring to there? Doesn't shock me, though. Let's just go with, I seem to recall something like this. Was Abraham Lincoln? Now, the very first thing that pulls up here is, was Abraham Lincoln a Republican? And the way they answer the question is a little deceptive. They refer to him here. Let me see. They want to lead you away from the Republican Party. and they give you they overwhelm you with responses here, but they don't give you a simple yes or no. And Bing will take you to, no, he was part of the Union Party is what they'll say. I mean, again, they're shaping the way young people understand history, the way they understand the truth, and in fact, the content that they're seeing. Pulling up your page, America's a possessive there, America's digitalshield.com. Some of the stuff I'm looking at right here that you guys have on the site, childhood at risk, exposing the shocking videos kids are seeing on YouTube, is horrifying stuff.
Oh, yeah. If you want to go back to google.com, I can give you a much simpler example of a manipulation, very large scale manipulation.
Okay, let's have one.
Just type the letter A.
Okay.
What are you seeing? What suggestions are they making? See, because they're manipulating you from the first character that you type.
Oh, the suggestions. Okay. Amazon Prime.
Oh, Amazon
Prime Video.
Amazon Prime Video.
AOL Mail. Way down the list. American Express. Amanda Bynes. Yep.
Okay, but the first two suggestions were Amazon. Now, why would they be Amazon? Because Amazon is Google's largest advertiser. And also, Google sends more traffic to Amazon than any other company. So these are their business partners. So just typing the letter A, I asked Senator Cruz to do this when I first testified before Congress, and he pulled it up, and 4 out of the 5 suggestions he got were for Amazon, because they want you to go to Amazon because Amazon is their biggest business partner. So what they are showing you, it has to do with them and their needs and their values and their, and their money making. It has nothing
prioritizing their interests.
It has nothing to do with you. And I wish we could figure out what this term is, because there is right now in the news an example where Google has changed a definition of a word. What's the word? I think it's something to do with maybe with Gaza or something. What is this issue? And why don't we know it? But Google changes definition. Let's see if I can get it maybe. Now, I'm not searching on Google, by the way. You should never use Google, because
I never use Google or Google products, which sometimes is very frustrating to my team, because I hate Google. And it was in hearing you, by the way, in DC, which is where we met. I was at an American Spectator gala where you were on stage and were speaking, and I was just blown away with the details that you were sharing at that time. Tell me this. Let's make it more personal, not just in the sense of companies or political parties, but how about individuals? Does Google use the ephemeral experience as a way of manipulating what someone thinks about, say, you?
Oh, of course. And then I just looked that up, and the word is bloodbath. And they're using this to change people's
yes, of course.
thinking about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump said that if I lose in such and such a state, there's going to be a bloodbath. So bloodbath. So my conservative, I call them my right-wing conservative nutcase friends, and they all laugh. My conservative friends say, oh yeah, but all he meant by bloodbath is there's going to be a financial meltdown. And sure enough, you look in major dictionaries, that is one of the definitions of bloodbath. So Google removed that definition, financial meltdown. They removed
the financial aspect.
They removed the financial aspect. So bloodbath just means literally, something that involves shooting and guns and lots of blood. And they removed the other definition.
Looking at it right here.
They removed the definition.
Yep.
But that's an
Outkick here. It says Someone at Google is determined to deter voters away from Donald Trump using bloodbath as a tool to accomplish that mission, removing the financial
Correct.
definition of bloodbath, which is absolutely incredible. So there's a prime example of that. Have you personally, and of course I know because you're a friend of mine, I know the answer to this, but have you personally been attacked by Google?
Oh, sure. The head of Google Search published a big article in Politico, which Politico would not let me respond to, by the way, because Politico gets so much of their traffic from Google, they can't afford to offend Google. But the head of Google Search published a big article all about me and my work, calling me a conspiracy theorist and saying that my work was, without merit and so on. Now, I actually send people to that article frequently because there's nothing actually in there about my work or me, nothing specific there. It's just allegations. It's just character assassination with no substance whatsoever. So I've been attacked over and over again, and I've also there have actually been attacks on me and my staff, which involve more than words, and which are very, very, very disturbing. So yes, I have been attacked. After I first testified before Congress about my research in 2019, I did a private briefing for a bunch of attorneys general. The group was led by Ken Paxton, who's head of he's the Attorney General of Texas. And I just gave this briefing. It was at Stanford University to these AGs, and I just told them all the things that we had been discovering. And afterwards, I was waiting out in the hallway. One of the AGs came out and came up to me and said, "Dr. Epstein, I don't mean to scare you." He said, "But based on what you've told us," he said, "I think it's likely you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months." And then he walked away. I know who it is. He's still an AG. And he just walked away. And I was not killed, obviously, because I'm still here. But a few months after this, my beautiful wife, Misty, was killed. And under circumstances, she was killed in a horrific car accident under circumstances that are very suspicious. And then her vehicle was never examined forensically, and it disappeared from the impound lot. And I was told it had been sent off to somewhere in Mexico. But that's just one example, which has, in some ways destroyed my life. But there have been things like this happening repeatedly in recent years. Our managing director, who was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. This was just 2 years ago now. 2 years ago, she and her very handsome husband, who I was always very jealous of, were walking in downtown San Diego, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. A man comes out of the crowd, pulls a knife, slits her husband's face all the way from his ear down to his mouth, looks at Michelle, laughs, and runs away. Now, she quit about 2 or 3 months later, and I don't blame her, because the first thing that went through her head was Google. And, there's no way to pin these things on Google, because if Google were actually behind them, it would go through many, many levels, and there'd be no way to pin these things on Google. But we did catch Google at one point sending a private investigator to our house, which was very disturbing to my wife. And, I was told by a former Google employee that Google likely has a team assigned to me. Now, that doesn't mean they're assigned only to me, but he said that they very likely have a team in the company that monitors what we do and that probably tries to interfere in a lot of what we do. I mean, this is, it's business, right? All is fair. Business is war, et cetera, et cetera. So, they're just conducting business in a way. I think I'm very lucky still to be alive. But, as a World War II pilot famously said, in World War II, he said, if there's flak coming at you, that means you're flying over the target. So, in a way, the interest they've taken in me and my work tells me that we're doing good work. And we're doing fabulous work. Now, are we getting the kind of support that we should be getting? No. If any of your audience want to help us or can connect us with any philanthropic, major donors or any foundations, I would urge them to get in touch with me, or they can simply sponsor one of our field agents. We call them our watchdogs. Those are the patriotic Americans in all 50 states who allow us to look over their shoulders, basically allow us to put special software in their computers so that we can actually record the content that Google and other companies are sending to them. And you can sponsor one of those people. We only pay them $25 a month. If you go to feedthewatchdogs.com, you can sponsor one of our field agents, our watchdogs. And I would urge you, if you can afford it, to again sign up for $25 a month, so you're actually continuously supporting one watchdog, and because it's a big expense, and that's a problem. And we don't have the support we need, unfortunately. But if we can get this system big enough, it will force these companies out of our elections, and it will force them to stop indoctrinating our kids, because the data we are collecting is court admissible.
If people want to support your work, how do they do that? Where can they go?
They could go to mygoogleresearch.com. That has lots of links, and there's all kinds of ways to support the work. So mygoogleresearch.com. As I understand it, we're also now accepting crypto and stocks and whatever people can come up with. So mygoogleresearch.com would be a good place to go. And we need people's help.
And if they know some big,
yeah.
And if they know, a foundation wants to contact you, if somebody wants to contact you for that purpose, where do they go for that?
The best way to contact us there is just go to info, INFO, at the name of the organization, which is the initials are AIBRT.org, AIBRT.org, info at AIBRT.org, and that'll go to our development director, or they can actually send it to development at AIBRT.org. And you'll be in touch with people who can, who know what to do with foundations and stock and crypto and all that. But I can tell you what we do is very, very, very exciting. We keep making new discoveries, even within the past week. But it's also very disturbing, because there are no constraints on these companies. None. And we're the only research group in the world.
Hillary Clinton attacked you.
Oh, well, that practically.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. That almost killed me, because
she attacked you and claimed your work had been debunked. Tell us about that.
Well, so in 2019, after I testified before Congress, President Trump tweeted about my testimony, because I was saying that Google had shifted millions of votes in the 2016 election. They shifted even more, and by the way, in 2020, they shifted more than 6 million votes to Joe Biden. But the point is, Hillary Clinton, I can't imagine why, decided to reply to Trump and undoubtedly got this language right from someone at Google, because Google was her largest financial supporter in 2016, and Hillary's chief technology officer, Stephanie Hannon, was a former Google executive. So undoubtedly, someone from Google called up Hillary after Trump tweeted, and Hillary posted a tweet to her 80 million followers saying that my work had been debunked and was based on data from 21 undecided voters. And at which point that got picked up by the New York Times and hundreds of mainstream publications, all of which then cut me off. So this is 2019. I've been completely cut off from mainstream media, for whom I've always worked and written, and I've been completely cut off since 2019. But that almost killed me. Because that was a crushing, in my opinion, to my reputation, which as a scientist had been flawless for 40 years. And now, just a couple of days ago, the New York Post, the New York Post repeated those crazy allegations from 2019, saying that they've been informed by informants. They don't even name the informants, or by Google, that my work is fraudulent. And we publish in the top peer-reviewed journals in the world. We present at scientific meetings. My work is extremely rigorous and is flawless and has never been debunked by anybody. But the New York Post actually repeated all that old junk from 2019. I wrote to the people I know at the Post, never heard back. So that stuff, you see, is just going to get repeated over and over again for the rest of my life. And then for the next 100 years after I'm dead, it's just going to get repeated because Google controls the messaging.
Well, Robert, as I've said to you privately, I will now say publicly, it's to your credits. If they weren't worried about you, they wouldn't attack you. And just as you were saying a moment ago, it means you're over the target and you're going to get a lot of flack. You're going to get a lot of pushback. I admire your courage. I admire your research. I've drilled down into your research. As you know, I had a lot of questions for you after I heard you present. And not because I thought that what you were saying wasn't true. It was rather that I thought I want a deeper understanding of what's being said here, because this is extremely important. This research is extremely important, and people need to understand what is happening and how big tech is changing the political landscape forever.
Well, you asked me very tough questions. I remember that conversation. You were very skeptical. And in fact, you should be, because I have always been skeptical about these discoveries one after another, because to me, they're just unbelievable. It's unbelievable that Google and to a lesser extent some other tech companies have this kind of power. It's unbelievable to me that we have never put any constraints on them at all. Right now, what is Congress doing? Oh, they're going to ban TikTok. You know what a joke that is? What an incredible joke that is, that they're going after TikTok. It's because they cannot get their act together to actually confront the American tech companies. The Democrats won't do it because the tech companies get them elected, and the tech companies give them a tremendous amount of money. And Google is the biggest lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And Republicans, generally speaking, won't go after the tech companies because Republicans don't like regulation. So they're going after TikTok so that they can say to the public, look, we're taking on big tech, the threat that big tech poses. TikTok is yes, China is very dangerous for us, no question. And TikTok has connections with China, absolutely. But that's just silly. I mean, do you realize that Google has worked with the Chinese government to help China control and surveil its own population? Shouldn't that be of interest to our leaders, that Google has been working off and on with the Chinese government? Shouldn't that be of interest? Instead, we're going after TikTok. No one is going after Google, not in any meaningful way, or Facebook, or Instagram, the kind of actions that have been taken are just silly. They're absolutely trivial, and the courts keep backing Google because the courts say Google can do what it wants because it's exercising its First Amendment rights to free speech. So if Google wants to suppress content, even though they've just abrogated your right to free speech, the courts have said to Google that's fine because Google can exercise its right to free speech. It's a private company. And so the courts and our Congress have allowed this to occur, and it is, in my mind, despicable. Curious for
What percentage of the internet? What percentage, Robert, of internet searches are Google?
It's right now it's 92% around the world, everywhere except mainland China, because mainland China, they have their own very aggressive systems of control and surveillance, which they've built with Google's help. There's also North Korea doesn't count because almost no one in North Korea has internet access. But everywhere else, 92% of search is done on Google, and the next most popular search engine gets about 2 or 3% of search. So they have no effect on elections at all, these other search engines. It's Google. It's Google. And we are doing nothing.
Robert, what would you say to someone who is using Google Drive, who is Gmail, Google search engines, and says, "Look, I have nothing to hide"?
I would say, please go to myprivacytips.com and you'll get to an article of mine, myprivacytips.com, which begins with the sentence, "I have not received a targeted ad on my computer or mobile phone since 2014. And then you'll learn how I use the internet in a way that protects the privacy of me and my family. Because you can use technology and still protect your privacy. Does it involve a little bit of learning? A little. Does it involve a little bit of money? A little. These services we get for free are worth about $5 a month. Would you pay $5 a month to get your privacy back? I would. I did. So myprivacytips.com, that's one place to go. By the way, if people want to see my most recent congressional testimony, which was just a couple of months ago in December, where I talk about America's Digital Shield.com, they can go to 2023 Epstein testimony.com, 2023 Epstein testimony.com. I'm sorry to give you so many links, but the point is my work is out there, but we're not getting the level of funding that we need to really take these companies down. I need help to do that. We built the system. So we built the big system, nationwide system in 2023. That cost over $3 million. So we did raise funds to do that. But now the system needs to be made much larger so that we have court admissible data in all 50 states. And we need the funds to make the system permanent. Why does it have to be permanent? Because if you don't have a monitoring system in place, you don't know what these companies are doing. You don't know how we're being manipulated. You don't know how they're messing with elections. You don't know what kind of horrible content they're sending to our kids. You have to have monitoring systems in place. Now, I've been approached already by people from 7 countries to help them build monitoring systems. And here is the one tiny little area where I agree with Donald Trump. I've replied to them, America first, because we need a large scale system, which we've now built, but we need a permanent system in place. Once the system is permanent and self-sustaining, I'll help people in other countries. But it's got to be here first, because this is where the problems arise. They don't arise from TikTok. They arise from our own companies that have taken over our government, work closely with our government agencies, but these companies have more power than our government has.
I think the average person listening to this, almost all of them are using some Google product, Google Drive, Gmail, Android phone, or something to that effect. And when I travel overseas a lot, and often the people that I'm dealing with, they're using, say, a messaging system like WhatsApp. There are roughly 2 billion people in the world who use that. I refuse to use WhatsApp. And that makes, there are some inconveniences involved with that by refusing to use it. And again, the answer of most people is, I have nothing to hide. What do I care if I use, a Google product? It's convenient. There it is. It's useful. It's good. It's effective. Got nothing to hide. You refuse to use any of those. Explain to people why they do have something to hide.
Well, first of all, everyone has something to hide, but you just don't usually think about it, but you do have things to hide. You don't want, but let's assume you have nothing to hide, which is impossible, but let's assume you have nothing to hide. Do you want these companies nevertheless surveilling you and your kids so aggressively that they then can manipulate every single decision that you make and that your kids make? They can manipulate the way your kids view the world and how your kids use language. We're talking about surveillance and control at levels that are almost unimaginable. And you're contributing to that problem if you are just handing over your data mindlessly every single day. Okay, don't do that. Stop doing that. Go to myprivacytips.com. Stop handing over your data. Now, I noticed just now that you were kind of struggling to think, what are the Google products people are using? You didn't mention Google Maps. You didn't mention the Chrome browser is actually Google. That YouTube is actually Google. Okay, so do you know how many different platforms are surveilling us 24 hours a day? It's not just these 10 or 11 we just came up with. Google alone is surveilling us over more than 200 different platforms, most of which people have never even heard of. So, for example, millions of websites around the world use Google Analytics to track traffic coming to their website. Well, and because Google provides this service for free. Okay, there's a piece I wrote that I published a few years ago. It's one of the best pieces I ever wrote. It's called "Free Isn't Freedom," where I explain that all this free stuff isn't free at all. You're paying for it with your freedom, whether you know it or not. The point is that Google Analytics, okay, what that means is that when you go to any one of a number of millions of different websites, Google Analytics is tracking you and handing over the information, some of it, to the website owner. So the website owner benefits, and that's why they keep using Google Analytics. But if you look at Google's privacy policy and their terms of service, what they say, because I've read them over and over again, is that we have a right to track you when you're using any of our products or services, even if you don't know you're being tracked. So in other words, when you're on any website at all that uses Google Analytics or Google AdWords or other products of Google, Google is tracking every single thing you do on those websites. Google bought Fitbit. Google bought Fitbit a few years ago. So Google is tracking all that physiological data from Fitbit users 24 hours a day. A few years ago, Google bought the Nest smart thermostat company. And what a shocker. A few years later, some professor type like me discovered that Google had installed microphones into some of the Nest devices. Now, when that was revealed, Google said, "Oh, yes, we did that, but we've never used them." Of course they're using them. And by the way, I checked at the time when this was discovered, and Google had recently been granted patents on methods for analyzing sounds in homes to make inferences about people's behavior at home. So think about that. If they've got microphones in your house, they know all about your sex life. They know whether your kids are brushing their teeth enough. They know whether there's, let's say, turmoil of some sort, alcoholism, conflict between parents and teenagers. Google has patents on these techniques for making use of sound coming from microphones. On some Nest products now, of course, they've also installed cameras. Now, people are aware, sometimes nowadays, if they have a smart thermostat or smart doorbell, that there's a camera on there, that there's a microphone. People are aware of that, but they're not aware that these devices are always on, always working. Here, I have a smartphone, like everyone does, right? See my smartphone? But my smartphone is a secure phone. Your smartphone is not. Your smartphone is listening to every single thing that you do, even if you turn it off. Now, you and I are old. We're old as dirt. One of us adds more color to his hair, but the fact is we're both actually quite old, and we remember, because this wasn't that long ago, when you could take the batteries out of your phone. Remember that? Wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they're all soldered in. You can't pop the batteries out. Why would they do that? It's because of surveillance. It's because that way, when you turn your phone off, the phone is still drawing power from the battery and it is still monitoring you. They get more data. So by soldering in the batteries, they end up with a lot more data. It's that simple. It's we're talking about again, the earth has shifted. It's the third time I've said it. The earth has shifted under people's feet. People have no idea. And what I do is really, really, really hard. It's really hard to do because, believe me, there are very powerful forces out there that don't want me doing this work. And I have young people who come here from all over the country, sometimes even from other countries, who helping me do this work. And these are amazing people. They're very, very smart. And, we do very rigorous work. We triple check everything. We publish in peer reviewed journals. And we make breakthroughs. So we had a piece just accepted for publication in PLOS ONE, which is one of the top multidisciplinary scientific journals in the world. That is actually mind-boggling. This piece, so I didn't even realize it when we were doing the work. It's only when we finally wrote it up that I finally realized what we had in our hands. Because in this study, we show that you can use the Google search engine to change people's opinions, not just about candidates or election issues, but about probably anything. We're changing people's opinions about fracking, sexual orientation. This study shows that search engines actually have that power to change. If someone is undecided on an issue, and there's bias in the content that they're getting from search results, that shifts opinions dramatically without people knowing. Now, think about that. What does that tell you? That tells you that search engines, just the algorithms, just doing their thing every single day, maybe without anyone at Google, messing with them, which they actually do more than 3,000 times a year by their own admission. But let's say no one's messing with the algorithms. What our new research tells you is that those algorithms are changing the thinking, the attitudes, the beliefs of billions of people, more than 5 billion people every single day, on any issue at all on which they're undecided, which they haven't made up their mind. They're trying to make up their mind, so they're doing a little search online. The point is, the algorithm is putting certain content up at the top. It's selecting certain content to show and putting it at the top, and that changes people's thinking. So search engines automatically are mind control devices. affecting right now more than 5 billion people around the world. These are mind control devices, period. With or without human intervention, the search engine is the most powerful mind control device ever invented. And now what are they doing? They're incorporating AI into their online tools, such as search engines. Now AIs are being incorporated into that process of preparing the content. And that means more and more that AIs are going to be deciding which way to shift people's thinking. Now, are AIs going to have your interests in mind or my interests in mind? Not really. I don't know whose interests they're going to serve. This is the kind of world that we have created. I'm going to say it for the fourth and last time. The world has shifted under people's feet, and they have no idea.
Dr. Robert Epstein, that seems to me to be a very poignant place for us to conclude. Very grateful to have you on today.
Well, I consider you a good friend. I'm so glad that we were able to meet, and that you were skeptical about my work and asked me tough questions, because that's how, I actually owe you a lot, because you really helped me, and as you know, in other on other topics as well, you've helped me, and I'm very grateful. And by the way, audience, we Larry and I have very different politics, very, very different politics, but we respect each other. And that's the way this country should be. We should be respecting each other. We should not be vilifying other Americans. We should not be dehumanizing other Americans. Okay. We should be respecting each other. United we stand. And, that's what I believe in. That's why I love this country. And the relationship that Larry has with me, that relationship is, to me, is an exemplar, should serve as an exemplar, because we respect each other. We don't agree on a lot of things, but we respect each other. That's the only way this country is going to get out of its, I'm inclined to be profane here, but to get out of the hole that we've dug for ourselves. That's the only way we're going to get out. And at the moment, what we're trying to do? We're using shovels to try to get out of a hole. You can't, if you're in a hole, you can't use shovels to get yourself out of a hole. And that's what we're doing right now. And they're big shovels. They're big and scary shovels. And we, how can we survive this is the question. How can we survive this? So when I hear words like bloodbath, to me, I get scared. And then when I see how Google messes with the definition, and then now we're right back to my research again, then I get scared in another way, because we've given too much power to the wrong people.
It's absolutely true. Let me say to the posse, the people who follow this show, please support the work of Dr. Robert Epstein. It's incredibly important work. His research is rock solid. He's been debunked by absolutely nobody. And the guy just keeps going. And he is performing an incredibly valuable public service. And by the way, not just to Republicans or to Democrats, he's providing an incredibly important service to anyone who believes in fair elections, who believes in freedom. And that's why his work is so important. So please support his work. Dr. Robert Epstein, it has been a pleasure to have you today on Ideas Have Consequences. I look forward to you joining me again on another occasion.
Anytime. And I'm glad to have your friendship. Thank you so much.
And I yours.